Welcome to the Revenue Cycle Rundown with Keybridge Medical Revenue Care. Our live show features respected industry experts that will take us on a deeper dive into today's hottest rev cycle topics. We're glad you're here for the rundown. Let's get started.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Revenue Cycle Rundown. I'm your host, Brian Garver, and here with one of my all-time favorite industry people, Mr. Bill Eikost, hailing out of Georgia, the Atlanta metro area. Bill, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Brian, great, man. It's good to be on another one of these with you as a teammate now.
Yeah, we did this, a year or two ago, probably close to 2 years ago, and had you as a guest on our show. And now here we are working together. Life is good, man.
Who would have thought, man? It's been a great couple months, and really enjoying it, and really appreciate the support of you and the rest of the Keybridge team as I've gotten settled in. We've been moving fast, haven't we? There's a lot happening, but that's good. I guess we should probably start out our conversation today by giving props to that team up in the north that won the NCAA last night. That's hard for me as a guy growing up in Northwest Ohio as a Bucks fan to acknowledge that Michigan won the national championship in basketball, but they really did play well down the stretch. And it's surprising. Almost all the starters were transfers in from other schools last year. So this NIL portal and everything is really something. But I couldn't help but draw some of the comparisons to kind of what we hear about and talk about in revenue cycle. Wayne Gretzky had a famous saying that said, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. And I think a lot of people thought Michael Jordan coined that phrase, but it was actually Wayne Gretzky. But, these both teams last night, it was a very physical game, and they had some streaks where they weren't making shots, but they just kept putting it up. And so, we see that with revenue cycle folks. And I think the ones that are most successful are the ones that continue to take chances, continue to take some risks, and really try some new things. Because let's face it, what made us successful, even as recent as 5 or 6 years ago, is not the same formula that makes us successful today. There continue to be a lot of industry forces and challenges at work that make it tough.
Yeah, I agree, Bill. And the word that comes to mind for me when I hear you talk about that is just grit. I mean, the gritty healthcare providers who roll up their sleeves and take action are the ones that are, moving the needle. They're moving the needle, and they're not just surviving, they're thriving in a really difficult healthcare, in America scenario. So hats off to them, standing ovation to them. But you're right. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And it's true in business. I'll never forget early in my business career, I had a mentor. Bob Keller was his name. And he's passed now, and just a great fella who kind of taught me the ropes. But I remember back then he talked about taking action, whatever it is. I mean, today, you have this moment. And he always said, take action, step forward, step into the problem, step into whatever it is you want to accomplish. Constantly, what's the old saying, paralysis by analysis, Bill?
Yeah.
It's dangerous. I mean, I get trying to avoid risk, but at some point you just got to step into it and take your shot. Just like,
and one of the things that we can all do, you've heard me say before, you and I are both glass half full kind of guys, and attitude is a choice. I mean, we wake up every day and we choose what our attitude is going to be. We know that life can throw us a lot of stuff, but it's 10% what happens to you, 90% how you react to it. And I just think that if you start with that and just say, if you feel like you're fighting a battle you're never going to win, and you feel constantly defeated, you feel constantly knocked down and unappreciated, it's going to be hard to rally. But you've got to decide among you and your team that there are some things that you can do. You can be proactive. And this is an industry where we really have got to continue to be more proactive and less reactive. That reactive piece, there's always going to be something to react to, no question about it. But we've got to be proactive in how we're supporting our teams, how we're training our teams, how we're moving forward to improve processes. I imagine in the little bit of time we have together today, it's appropriate to bring up AI and just the impact that that's having on our industry. I mean, you and I are hearing people talk about challenges with staffing. It's one thing it's hard enough just to find the right person, but even when you find them, some of that work that needs to get done, a lot of that administrative rework, whether it's denials, prior authorizations, whatever it is, can be so monotonous and so tedious. It's not something somebody wants to necessarily spend 40, 45 hours a week doing. It can be really challenging. So I think hospitals are realizing that automation and AI can really help be part of the solution. The challenge is, and again, I've said it, there's so many bright, shiny objects out there as it relates to AI. The question is, who do you use? Who do you go to? Who do you trust? Do we wait on Epic? Do we wait on Oracle to come up with the solution? And I think you can certainly wait and follow those timelines, but they're not necessarily always going to be best of breed solutions either. So
it reminds me of a comic strip. And it's this comic of all these people standing in the crowd, and the speaker's on the stage, and he goes, "Who wants change?" And everybody in the crowd's going, yeah. They're all raising their hand. Then he says, "Who actually wants to change?" And everybody pulls their hand down, and they're kind of like, And then he says, "Who wants to lead the change?" And everybody leaves.
That's right.
But it is attitude. It's what you said. It's all about attitude. I was, even in driving AI, I mean, having that attitude of, hey, let's go, let's step into this. I was at a conference in Illinois last week speaking, and we got into this attitude conversation when I was presenting. And we talked about a non-negotiable at Keybridge. And the non-negotiable that we talked about at Keybridge is choose your attitude. And so people were kind of like, man, that's a non-negotiable. I said, yeah. I go, think about it. We're not saying you have to have a great attitude all the time. That's not the non-negotiable. The non-negotiable is choose your attitude. Be aware of it. Be conscious of it. Because wherever you allow it to go will drive your behaviors, your actions, and your outcomes, and stepping into these challenges that we're doing.
And I think if we reflect on some of those challenges that we all face, whether they're personal or professional, a lot of times we come out of it wiser, more knowledgeable, and maybe better off for it. We think back to the pandemic, which was really not all that so long ago, and boy, I mean that really tested us all much more than we ever thought we would be tested. But I think in many ways we've emerged from it, better having gone through that experience. Certainly don't want to wish it upon anybody or have it happen again. But you learn from it.
You grow.
Prepare for the unexpected. Again, don't be reactive. Don't wait for things to happen. Be proactive and say, what can I do to better prepare our organization in the event that something of this nature happens again? And take those necessary steps. I think everybody's trying to do the best they can with the resources they have. You just sometimes have to work a little bit smarter. And I guess I would throw in here, Brian, too, there are a lot of companies out there doing a lot of really good work, regardless of the products and services that they provide to our industry. And, I know sometimes it only takes one or two bad apples to sort of spoil it for everybody else, but there are some good companies, some good people out there doing some really good work. So I would encourage the providers, especially who are listening, is, just have the conversation. Don't feel like just because you're in a conversation with someone who's a business development person that you're required to leave the dealership with a purchase. I mean, it's good to talk about it and to explore maybe what they're experiencing with some of their other clients that they can share with you and so on. So
I think one of the best ways for us all to continue to step in and lead our industry of healthcare revenue cycle is to have a curious mind. Have a curious mindset in every engagement, every opportunity, but lead with curiosity. And when we all do that, we grow, we get better, we learn, and it gives us the confidence to do what you were talking about and take the shot. And Bill, speaking of that, you took a big shot in your career here recently and made a massive career change, and it blew up on LinkedIn. It was major. I think the ground shook that day when the industry heard that you had made a career change to Keybridge. I'd love to just touch on that for one quick minute. Just kind of, you could have went and done anything, Bill. I mean, you could have done anything. Why did you choose, number one, to stay in this industry? Number two, why did you choose Keybridge as your partner moving forward?
Well, you're right. I could have gone a different direction with in another industry, but my gosh, I mean, I'm in my 37th year in this industry. I've invested a lot in the relationships. Those relationships have meant so much to me, both personally and professionally. I'll be 63 this year. I didn't feel like I could just walk away. I felt like I still have so much to give.
Yes.
But then as it relates to Keybridge, you and I have talked about this. We concentrate and focus and hear so much about the patient experience. But what was really impressive for me was the balance, kind of like that three-legged chair that I think Keybridge is committed to. And that is not just the patient experience and making sure that every interaction we have with the patient is positive and puts our clients in a positive light as far as how their patients perceive them. But you also have the client experience. We want to make sure that we're committed to the work that we're doing for our clients, that we're meeting and oftentimes exceeding their expectations. And then you've got the employee experience. It's very obvious. It was very obvious to me very quickly how Keybridge had invested in their people and in their culture. And I just think that's so important today. We know who our customer is. We're not necessarily catering to an investment community. And I'm not talking badly about those organizations that have that component, but we know who our customer is every day, and we're doing everything we can to serve those customers just to the very best that we know how. And that was very appealing. In addition to the fact that it's an organization that allows me to really be myself and do the things that I like to do in the industry. It's not just always about my next deal or whatever. I like to feel like I'm helping move the discussion along and being part of the solution, and certainly don't want to be part of the problem.
Well, we're certainly thrilled and excited to have you on our team, and great things are happening at Keybridge with your help. I've always found in my entire professional life that when you just do the right thing and you go out there and, like you said, Bill, drive conversation, get people collaborating and kind of huddling up and intertwining their arms and saying, okay, let's stand together and move forward. The business comes. I mean, it just comes. It's not like you have to be focused on, I got to go sell another deal. No, it just happens naturally by doing the right things. That's right. Why I think it's been a great partnership.
And I think you and I both are, feel somewhat of an obligation to be connectors. When we're in a conversation and maybe somebody's talking about a need that they have that Keybridge doesn't necessarily have a solution for, just with our contacts and our experience in the industry, if we know somebody that's doing that and doing that well, we don't have to specifically recommend that service, but we can say to somebody, gosh, have you talked to so-and-so? They're in that space. And from everything I hear, they're doing some pretty good work. And I think that puts us in a light of, hey, these are folks that want to help out. And again, really try to provide the resources. Let's face it, providers, when it comes to vendors, they're getting hit from all directions, whether it's at a conference or just their email, and in some cases their cell phones. They're getting phone calls from people peddling their services or their products, and they just are not able to afford the time to really dig in. And they might recognize some of the names, but if you quizzed them on what do each of those companies do, most of them would say, I think I know what they do, but I'm not 100% sure. And so, just keeping everybody informed of who's who just merged with who just changed names, whatever it might be.
Yeah, keeping people up to speed on what's going on and being a connector. Speaking of being a connector, Bill, looking at some recent data about challenges facing revenue cycle leaders in 2026, and still number one on the list are rising claim denials. It's the number one headache out there.
Something new and different. I mean, we've been talking about it for years.
It's been going on for years. Tell me your perspective on where the industry's been, where it's at, and where's it going when it comes to this massive headache that the industry's been dealing with.
Yeah, I've asked people in the industry before. It comes down to either denial management or denial prevention, and I think I've changed my perspective a little bit. I think as I've learned more about it. I mean, I heard I heard people referring to some of the AI solutions that they had implemented to address denial management and working their denials, and then somebody else said, well, are we really addressing the root issue? Let's address denial prevention with AI in hopes of reducing some of this burdensome administrative work that we're being forced into on the back end. And whether it's denials or needing a prior authorization. One quick statistic that I'll throw out there to you: you've heard the conversation about Medicare Advantage and traditional Medicare.
Yeah.
So Medicare Advantage oftentimes, for example, requires a lot more prior authorizations before services can be rendered than traditional Medicare. Get this statistic: in Medicare Advantage, 53 million prior authorization requests in 2024 versus traditional Medicare. Guess how many? 625,000.
Oh my
I mean, the difference is just enormous. And so, again, we need to, and then most hospitals will tell you a lot of these denials and these prior authorizations that they're appealing or following up on get overturned. They successfully appeal these denials. I mean, it's just crazy. And I've heard hospitals say how challenging it is, even if they say, well, we're going to take them to court. Well, the work required to pull together and make their case against the payers in court, who are going to be stacked coming in, is it's additional time and resources that most of the hospitals don't have to put together. So yeah, I think it's moving, needing to be more automated for sure. And we're definitely seeing that. I think hospitals, as a general rule, are all gathering a lot of information. They have a lot of options to choose from. They're deciding what their AI strategy is, how to incorporate that. Do we incorporate it on the front end? Do we incorporate it more on the back end? And again, I believe, as I think a lot of people do, is if we can figure it out and fix it on the front end, again, the root cause, hopefully the trickle down impact will be positive for everybody.
Yeah, and we're seeing that in the industry. I would say that's where we're going. We're really seeing that shift of, front end elite levels of metrics, goals, performance. You mentioned prior authorization, for example. I mean, really seeing the industry focus on, that piece. And when I've looked at some of the data of what are the root causes of these denials, one of the leaders, it does come back to that authorization prior auth piece.
Yeah.
So if we can elevate there, it's going to downstream, save time, money, reduce the number of denials, and increase cash flow for hospitals. So,
because I think most providers, what you and I are hearing out there is that most of them are not able to handle the full volume of what they've got. There are parts of it that continue to be so manual, but so they need the help. They need the help from somebody like us or others out there that do that work.
So question, Bill, on that, you've been doing a podcast with you and some other industry professionals that has really gained some traction, a lot of buzz in the industry about it out there. Tell us about that podcast. And is this a topic you guys have been talking about as well?
Yeah, we're trying to hit on everything. So I do a podcast once a month with a couple of my industry colleagues. Heather Dunn is the Vice President and Revenue Cycle Chief Revenue Officer at Novant Health in North Carolina. And Valerie Barkoff, who is the CEO now of her company called the 6QD, which stands for 6 Questions Deep. And it's called The Shift RCM Talks, The Shift RCM Talks, wherever you get your podcasts. But we're trying to make them 15 to 20 minute episodes. We're trying to get in and provide tips for revenue cycle leaders, some insight of some things that they can do to hopefully make their organization more effective, more efficient. Some really good discussion. We've just recently had one on the importance of preparing for cybersecurity incidents and that kind of thing. We had one on leadership. We've had one on, just had one that hasn't been released yet on Medicare Advantage plans and the impact that those are going to continue to have as we move forward. And so just trying to create some community, Brian, in revenue cycle, but also sort of bring some of the fun and some love back to revenue cycle, because we want people to look at it as an admirable profession. A lot of people would say the next generation of revenue cycle leaders is kind of a short list. And we want some of those, mid-level managers, especially, to feel like, hey, I aspire to that position. I want to continue moving up the path, up the career ladder, and we want to encourage them and help be just one of the solutions to give them some of the tools that they need to be more effective.
Yeah, love that. What a great trio, you and your partners in that podcast. And I know it's become very popular, and I can see why. With the three of you, the amount of wisdom, knowledge, experience, and foresight that the three of you can kind of come together and talk about. So challenge all of you out there to make sure you hop on. And tell us one more time, Bill, the name of the podcast.
The Shift, RCM Talks.
Love it. The Shift, RCM Talks.
We're having
Bill,
fun
I
with it.
appreciate you being on our LinkedIn live show today. Really excited about where we're at, where we're going. To all of our guests out there listening today, be sure to look for Bill or myself or Susan McDonald or Kylene Ordway as we're out there in the industry mixing it up at different events and shows, talking about what we're facing as an industry and how we work through it together.
Yeah, for sure. We're into spring, which is kind of a renewal, a restart. Things are starting to green up a little bit. I hope they are for me down here. I hope they are for you up in Ohio.
They are.
Old man winter hung around a little bit, but it's a time when you hopefully the sun's out a little bit more. Things are greening up. Things are blooming. It's a good time to be alive. And I would encourage everybody, get out and enjoy some of the outdoors. Don't get stuck behind a computer monitor all the time. And, we hope that everybody has a great spring. And like Brian said, we look forward to seeing you out there on the circuit.
Awesome. Thanks again, Bill. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Make it a great day, and we'll see you out there soon. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.